buttons for once.
I don't even say.
Plugged into you. Okay. Thank you.
It is March 27, 2023. It is 6 o'clock. We are here for the Common Council meeting on the second floor of City Hall. Agenda's been posted. Media has been notified. Clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt,
Here.
Stephen Jopek,
Here.
Eileen Daniel,
Here.
Kieran Mikulowski,
Here.
Gerald Anderson, Thomas Barnett,
Here.
Tom Kelly,
Here.
Leanne Felton,
Here.
Chris Hannes.
Here. We do have quorum. Please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to number 4, which is public comment. I have Carrie Bladorn. Nope, you gotta hit the button. It turns.
Does it have to be red?
Yep.
Excellent. Hello, I'm Carrie Bladorn, and many know me from my role as the seasonal director at Pioneer Park Historical Complex. For the record, I am not currently employed by the city at this time, although hope to be this summer. I am also the vice president of the Oneida County Fair. The Oneida County Fair is a nonprofit organization and is not directly affiliated with the Oneida County government, and is the Oneida County Fair in name so far as it is our mission to draw the residents and visitors of Oneida County together for a great annual event. I'm here to speak tonight on behalf of the fair, its board, and its thousands of attendees, including families and children. The fair has been held at Pioneer Park in the city of Rhinelander, the county seat of Oneida County, since 2009. During that time, it has become one of the most looked forward to family events of the year in our area. These last several years, attendance has soared as nearly 20,000 people have come to Pioneer Park to enjoy the annual festivities. It is the largest event in the area that specifically caters to families and children, but also provides entertainment and activities for people of all ages. Thousands of those families and children come from out of the area because the fair is known for its old-fashioned small-town charm in an idyllic setting. Those visitors book hotel rooms and other local accommodations, and they stop for gas to and from our community. The fair has been a wonderful opportunity to invite people into Rhinelander and showcase the city as one seeing much progress and growth these past years. The fair couldn't put on this wonderful family fun event without the generous support of local businesses and individuals, but not least of which has been the continued support from the city of Rhinelander, as it pertains to the use of Pioneer Park and the waiving of fees that allow the fair to operate these past 14 years. Historically, the city of Rhinelander has seen the benefit of standing behind the fair, working together, and the importance of supporting this event to help draw people to the city. It is true that we do not know what the future holds as to a location of the fair with planned improvements and progress at Pioneer Park, but until that time, we ask and hope that the city of Rhinelander will continue its support by waiving the associated fees to help put on the fair yet again this year. This year, the fair is scheduled for July 27th through the 30th, where Pioneer Park will once again host animals, exhibits, carnival rides, contests, good food, live music, and family entertainment. But most importantly, bring smiles, laughter, and lifelong memories to fair attendees right here in Rhinelander. And we hope that you'll join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Hagan.
So this has to do with the Olson Lane. I have been in to talk to Zach a couple times about my address because I'm coming up on a year of living in my new house, and all the mail would go to the previous house. Now, upon me being at my house a year, the post office does not have to send my mail anymore to me. So could we please change my address on that list to my current address is 3429 Olson Lane. so I can get any paperwork that is sent out. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Urquhart.
Hello, I'm here to touch on the new city ordinance for the special assessments, mainly regarding the Olson Lane project. I've read the city ordinance here, and I do believe it does a fairly good job outlining what the city is able to do as far as having full authority to install public improvements. The fact that it can levy these special assessments under the taxing power of the city, and that the city can even levy special assessments under the police power of the city. But I don't believe it does a very detailed job in outlining what other requirements would come prior to these special assessments. For example, what would be required, step A, B, and C before you would fall on the special assessment. On a side note, I've been coming to these meetings for the last two and a half months now, and there's been a lot of talk about improving the city, improving the town, making it more family friendly with the county fair, with the skate park at Pioneer Park, and trying to improve the city as a whole and attract potential new people to the area. Something that would not attract people to the area would be trying to levy these large fees against people who live here without them knowing about them at all. The city needs to do a better job of making sure people are aware of this. It does state in the proposed city ordinance that it is the city's responsibility to notify any potential residents. I think we've shown just by us being here over the last 2 months that the mail is not sufficient and not reliable enough. I would encourage the potential add-on to do a face-to-face of the people who live on that particular street that will be affected by the assessment. I think that's a fair assessment to talk to these people face-to-face, just so they are aware, and there is absolutely no miscommunication between the city and the people who live in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, our fire chief.
Good evening. I just wanted to brief the council real quick on lobby day that I attended last week down in Madison. We had an opportunity to lobby for shared revenues, and our request is that you help to show support for the funding for shared services or for shared revenues for police, fire, and EMS. What we're going for is 1 cent off the 5 cents of sales tax, which comes out to about $1.5 billion. The main portion of this that we're lobbying for, that we're pushing for, is 43% of that goes to maintenance of effort for manning and services. That's for police, fire, and EMS, to make sure that it goes to where it needs to go to. We've been lacking for a long time in funding shared revenues and local services. So this is something that we really need to get on. There's good bipartisan support right now for it. So if you could contact our representatives and let them know that you support that and push them to support it as well. We had some really good conversations down there, and we look forward to some future conversations with our reps. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Any of the alders have any public comment? Okay. Moving on to number 5, which is mayor's comments. Per our research, the mayor gets to appoint 1 alder person to serve on the Rhinelander District Library. So I'd be reappointing Tom Kelly, who is currently serving. And then letter B would be the city administrator and myself for doing a meet and greet tomorrow at 4 o'clock at the Rhinelander District Library. This is in part to get the public to meet our new city administrator, as well as ask questions about upcoming projects and this year ahead. Moving on to number 6, which is city administration report. Patrick?
I have nothing. It's in everyone's packet, so.
Okay. Number 7 does not apply for tonight's meeting. Number 8, ordinances first and/or second reading. Discuss and/or action, first reading proposed ordinance 2023-2, payments of special assessments. And that would be page 10 in your packet and to page 13.
Daniel, I'll make a motion to recognize the first reading of ordinance number 2023-2, payment of special assessments.
Holt, I'll second.
Any discussion? Mr. Anderson?
This was, as I recall, this was tabled from the last meeting. And what was tabled was the version that I had presented. I have not really worked at reconciling the differences, but I know a lot of the wording that I changed seems to still be here. I'd just like a clarification for what rules we follow on these first and second readings, or when things are tabled, as to what form it comes back in.
I refer to Steve, our attorney.
I didn't understand your question at all, Gerald.
Okay.
Mr. Holt?
My recollection of the reason it was tabled was because Gerald had a number of wording additions that we wanted to give our city attorney, who we pay to write ordinances, an opportunity to incorporate or to review and look over that, because we hadn't received it until very late in the day. So I could be wrong in my memory of that, Gerald, but I think that was the reason, and therefore my understanding would be that the ordinance we're looking at now for the first reading would have those considerations embedded in it, and as a first reading would give us the opportunity to spend 2 weeks until the second reading, making sure that the way it's presented now is acceptable.
Mr. Anderson?
I think he stated it correctly as far as what happened. Maybe that was the meeting that Steve was appearing by Zoom, so it may be that he never received a copy of what I had proposed here. I now recognize that as an issue. Well, okay. For a first reading, we can work with what Steve has presented.
I would, my response would be, I prepared the ordinance that was presented over a month ago now.
Right.
That amendment or that ordinance was discussed, and you may well have brought out a separate document. You also had emailed me on at least 3 occasions with regard to the ordinance. I took my original proposed, which was tabled, And I took that document and I redrafted it in the format that's here today, taking into consideration the issues that you had raised with regard to certain aspects of the ordinance and certain numbering concerns you had and how it fit into our current ordinance, and address the questions about, does parts of our current ordinance still survive, do they not survive, and try to facilitate a clear representation in the whereas provisions as to what we were trying to accomplish. Our current ordinance requires that all properties must immediately connect to any sewer or water line that's placed in front of their property. Our current ordinance requires that you do assessments as of the installation of the services. This ordinance was an attempt to give you an option that is available under Wisconsin statutory law, and that's a deferral option that allows you to say, well, we're going to put in the sewer and water, but we're not going to assess until such time as we determine, meaning the council, that you're utilizing those services. And of course, that would be by connection, so that you could then defer it until someone connected, and at that time, the charges would be levied. The costs are borne by the city, but they're not borne by the city as a general cost. They're borne by the city kind of in an inchoate type manner, so that if and when somebody joins onto the city sewer and water, then they can pick up the cost that has been held inchoate for a period of time. That's what this ordinance does. It recognizes the state of Wisconsin statutory law that allows the city to assess, as was pointed out earlier, either under the police power or under taxation power, which really is a determination of how the project is initiated. There's a differential between a project being initiated because private citizens ask that the sewer and water be brought to them, and where the city on their own determines that there be installation because they're tearing up the street for some other reason, or they're in that area and doing work. Under Wisconsin statutory standards, there really is little or no excuse for not providing sewer and water to every citizen of a community. The recognition is that Wisconsin does have rural aspects to some of their communities, so it doesn't happen overnight. But in other communities, it does happen overnight. It so happens that we do have areas of Rhinelander that are still serviced by their own private sewers and their own private wells. Eventually, all of those areas will probably have to be connected to city water and sewer, because the legislature is getting stricter and stricter about that. It's not a decision that the city can make. This is an edict from the state of Wisconsin. And if you have it available and the state, for example, has helped fund your projects, they're going to require that you make those projects available. The other concern that you have in this ordinance is what percentage of the costs should be shared by the city versus by the benefited party. That's also put into this ordinance so that you as councilmen can determine what percentage of the total cost should go as a charge against the benefited property versus should be absorbed by the entire city. In other words, every citizen of the city doesn't really benefit by putting a sewer and water line down somebody else's, road, but yet there is a benefit to the city to have as many people on sewer and water as possible. So this gives you the ability to determine in various and in sundry ways whether or not you want to assess 100% of the cost, 10% of the cost, 60% of the cost, whatever, and you of course have to base that on the benefited property, and you have to determine in comparison to the cost what's the benefit, and that's an analysis that you as a council will have to be made under the terms of this ordinance. That wasn't available under the previous ordinance. Basically, the previous ordinance says you assess the cost. Now, the city of Rhinelander has in the past had different percentages, but generally it's been somewhere around a 60-40 split, benefited property paying 60%, the city picking up 40%. In other words, the general taxpayers all were paying for a portion of it, and the benefited parties were paying for a portion of it. It also has the caveat that is in most statutes of this type that says if you're on a corner property, you don't pay twice. In other words, just because you got sewer and water on one road and another road, we're not going to charge you twice because you have it available on two different locations. I think that fairly well defines all of the aspects of this redrafted ordinance, which does fit exactly into the ordinances that exist here in the city of Rhinelander. The numbering stays consistent with those ordinances, and it should fit together in that methodology.
Ms. Daniel?
Can you tell me where it's outlined the procedure prior to construction so that homeowners are aware that the sewer and water lines are going in?
Yeah, that's in Wisconsin statutes, which
Okay.
this ordinance adopts the Wisconsin statute. The
Okay.
Wisconsin statute outlines the process and procedure. We could repeat it in the ordinance.
I think that would be beneficial so that folks don't
That's-
have to go
you know.
looking everywhere for it if they're curious. And we do
Well,
also,
let me just caution you.
Sure.
The issue by doing that, what you can do, is that if the state statute ever changes, you're going to have to change the ordinance, whereas if you cite the statute, of course, you're going to change with the state legislature. But we can certainly pull together the actual statute. That's not difficult to do.
well, as a citizen mentioned a couple meetings back, if we are following the state procedures, clearly we're not following the state procedures. So
Yes,
the
we
state-
did.
I would sure like to see the paper trail because I've been told otherwise by citizens. I know. So
You were here, everyone was here when we first brought the principle, here's the state law, okay? And I'm more than happy to give a lecture on special assessments if that's what the council would like. Because I wrote a memorandum, I thought I sent it out to you, but if I didn't, I'll be more than happy to share it. The law in Wisconsin with regard to special assessments is, if you're going to specially assess a project, first of all, you have to have a discussion with the council. It's called you're doing what's called I'm trying to think of the exact word, but it's a primary resolution that you do, and it guesses at what the cost would be. And you bring that resolution to the council. The council, preliminary resolution, the council takes that preliminary resolution and it passes that resolution, which this council did do. Once that resolution is passed, then you go through and you actually do the bidding of the project, you begin the project. At that time, you send out notice to the public that this is being done. My understanding was, and I'm not the city clerk and I'm not the city administrator, but my understanding is that's when the first set of letters went out to the public. Then we came back to the council, because this is what the statute requires. When we had a public hearing, and I noticed it was noted for a public hearing, it was noticed as a public hearing with regard to the final resolution. The final resolution is how much is going to be charged to the various property owners. That final resolution is brought to you as a council. You as a council then vote on that final resolution. Once that final resolution is voted on, then a notice of the special assessment is sent out to the property owners. That's the Wisconsin statutory format that's to be followed. Now, I can tell you the cities do it differently. Some cities will start out with the preliminary resolution, and then they'll have a public meeting where they'll bring in charts and diagrams. They'll show where the sewer line is. They'll discuss the sewer line. They'll discuss what a lateral is. I've sat through them. They can go on for hours, and they'll talk about what are the different aspects of the project. That's a way of doing it too. I mean, and some cities do that, and some cities put out pamphlets and brochures and other things, especially if it's a large project. If it takes, for example, when Stevens Street was done, very large project, a lot more people were affected, so there was probably more done when that project was done. This was a smaller project. Again, the notices went out. The best of my knowledge, I never received any comments back until after the final assessment.
And after the final assessment is made, there's really no going back. You've already done that. Now, you stopped before you approved the final assessment. And we've been in this limbo ever since then, because you stopped the process when we got to that final assessment. And that's where we are right now.
Ms. Daniel?
I'm going to go back to the very first thing you said, which was, it's my understanding that the letters went out. I would like to see proof somehow that the letters went out.
And I'd have to rely on the clerk or the city administrator.
Okay,
they don't come from the city attorney's office.
I understand that 100%. But in reading the statutes, it's not just the letter. Did we have a public hearing?
Yes, we had a public hearing. It was noticed. I know that.
It was noticed. You have to understand that when you say we voted on, yes, we did. We need to have trust and faith in our department heads, and we do, that what we're being told, because we're here twice a month, right? Besides doing our own homework on the back end, right? We're trusting that you're doing the due diligence and the things that need to be done. So when it comes to us, we can say with confidence, yes or no. So we took it on faith that these people had been notified. If you had come to me and said, we're just going to do this project and then we're going to throw the cost at the homeowners, I don't think there's anybody on the city council that would have said, yep, go for it. We have to have trust and faith that what we're being told at city council is all of the facts, not just some of the facts. And I kind of feel a little bit railroaded on this particular incident, because I do think that there were citizens, constituents, who were blindsided. I do not believe that they're coming here, putting themselves on in the public eye to lie to us and tell us that they were blindsided. So my question going forward is, I would like us in the ordinance to outline step A, we determine something needs to be done. Step B, we get the bids and find out how much it's going to get cost. Step C, it comes to city council and we approve it. They do everything, But before a shovel hits the dirt, we know that anybody that's going to be affected publicly has been notified and has had a chance to be heard publicly. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
Well, I'd like to point out that our existing ordinance entitled Special Assessment Procedure 3.0, 2.03 does pretty much spell that out. If it's maybe a summary of what the statute says, I don't think it's that far off. If it needs improvement, we need to look at that. I think that procedure is spelled out, but something went wrong in this case, and I think that the problem is somehow people to be affected by this did not get the word, so we didn't hear from them. And I don't know how or why that happened, but that has the effect of making the whole thing seem rather unfair, even though we went through the steps in our ordinance. I would ask maybe Mr. Sorensen to look at the existing ordinance too that we're adding to and see if maybe that needs some tweaking to be more informative as to how we operate. It seems to me it covers most of it.
If I may, Mr. Anderson, you're exactly correct. The existing statute does touch on the state statute very succinctly. It doesn't go into much detail. We can certainly put it in more detail, but it does succinctly touch on those factors that are in the state statute. And I didn't take those and get rid of those. I just added to that.
Right. And I'm in favor of what you want to add as far as spelling out what we can do with assessments, the payment of assessments once they're made. I think I have some things I'd like to write to you about again.
That's fine.
And I'll try to do it in the next couple of days. But
Sure.
two items I'd just like to mention. In the part about, there's a line that says, the council may defer assessments in certain limited situations. It seems like we need more on that, about what the limits are, but what we might or might not want to do. Also, when we come down to almost the last paragraph, where it's talking about connection charges in lieu of assessment. But then it says the connection charge can be paid in installments similar to an assessment. I think the way that's worded needs to be looked at some more, because it talks about something happening within 12 months, either of hooking up or of being notified. And I don't think that's very clear, but it almost makes it sound like if you don't hook up for some lengthy period of time, you won't have the option of paying connection charge in installments. So I'd like that to be clearer if that's what we intend.
Yeah, and let me just comment. You know, the reason I'm trying to do this is simply because I've listened to the people that have been here, and I listen to you as councilman, feel like you're in a rock and a hard place that certainly, I don't think anybody that's sitting up here in front right now tried to put you in that rock and a hard place. But we recognize that you were, and so it's how do we find a way that we can try, we can't dig up the road, and tear out the sewer and water. The way this is written right now, you as a council could say, we're not going to assess anything. That's what it says. It gives you that right. But I agree with you, Mr. Anderson, that you've got to have standards, and I didn't add those standards to this on purpose because that's not my decision to what standards. I can offer standards, and I will do that with a rewrite if that's what you're asking me to do. But I think that what I was trying to say to you as a council is you've got yourself in a rock and a hard place, I'll use those words, and you were looking for how can we find a way that we can balance the interest of the public, the interest of the city. We got a sewer and water there, and so we got to deal with it. And this was a way of attempting to balance the equities of the situation in such a way that everyone could take a bad situation and try to make it maybe just not so bad. But that's the only tools I've got is the Wisconsin statute and the things that you're allowed to do under Wisconsin law. I can't change the fact that Wisconsin law requires people to pay if their property is benefited, unless I run for the legislature
I appreciate what we're trying to do, and I don't like to give the impression that we're delaying this thing, because the idea is to get ourselves in a position where we can make the right decision on this and future cases.
And where it'll never happen again, is my understanding.
Mr. Holt?
Thank you. With all due respect, the last 10 minutes, almost all of that I've heard said multiple times over the course of the last 2.5 months. There is a process that we need to get through, and that process is that we need to approve an ordinance which takes 2 readings in order to grant ourselves the power and authority to come up with other solutions that were not available in the ordinance as it was written now. So every time we go around the same circle of all of the grievances of what has happened in the past, the tension in the room amplifies, and we're still just going in circles. The ordinance, we need to pass a first reading. Then we have 2 weeks to review any additional things, and then we pass the ordinance through a second reading, and then we can do a special assessment, and then we can decide how to assess that at that point. But right now, we're not there yet. And so going in circles during a meeting, which has happened multiple times, doesn't help anybody get through that process. This is a long process by definition. Government, to quote a former alderperson, moves at the speed of snot. And so we need to go ahead and expedite that as much as we can without rehashing things that have been said in council chambers multiple times over the past few meetings. So with that in mind, I ask that we call the question on this.
Clerk, take the roll call.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Kira Michalowski,
Aye.
Tom Kelly, Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Okay. First reading passes, moves to our next meeting. Moving on to 8B, discuss and/or action of first reading ordinance 2023-3 adoption of the International Property Code. This would be page 15 and 16 in your packet. Mr. Anderson?
I move the adoption of the International Property Management Code with the change that the words codes, plural, should be made singular in the title and the first line of the second paragraph. There's only one code that I'm aware of and that I think the inspection department is asking for, and the rest of the paragraph uses a singular, so just drop those two S's off.
Is there a second?
Was that a motion, sir?
Yes.
I second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing. Since this is the first reading, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Moving on to 8C, discuss and action second reading of ordinance 2023-1, amending 5.01.31 state codes adopted. That would be page 15 and 16 in your packet.
Joe Peck moved to adopt or approve second reading of Rhinelander City Ordinance number 2023-1, amending 5.01.03 state codes adopted, sorry.
Michalowski, second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Kira Michalowski,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to number 9, unfinished business, discuss and/or action of removal of building and fence at Pioneer Park. This would be page 18 in your packet. We're looking to, with your approval, remove the announcer booth in the spring of 2023, and then the outfield fencing to be removed mid-June after they do their May and June practices.
Barnett, I'll make a motion to approve the removal of the announcer's booth and the fencing.
Felton, second.
Motion second. Any discussion?
Does that need to be a more clear motion as far as the spring 2023, or can we just do it as is in the packet? Just making sure with the 2 separate dates.
I think as stated in the packet, since
It'll
the
be
packet
okay.
is public
Okay.
record, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Not seeing any discussion. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Kira Michalowski,
Aye.
Tom Kelly,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to 10A, discuss and/or action of common council meeting minutes from February 27th. Ms. Mikulowski?
I'll move to approve the common council meeting minutes from February 27th, 2023.
Holt second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Moving on to 10B, discuss and/or action of planning commission meeting minutes from February 7th.
Holt, I'll make a motion to accept the planning commission meeting minutes from February 7th, 2023.
Daniel second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Minutes approved. Moving on to 10C, discuss action item claimed by Tom O. 1021 Thayer Street for a compensation of $63.29. This would be page 27 in your packet. This has to do with hydrant flushing from last year. This resident and customer of our water utility had to buy a water filter for $63.29 and is requesting that we would cover that cost. I defer to Steve, our attorney.
Well, it's obviously up to you to decide if you want to cover the cost or not. I just would indicate to you that you do flush your system quite often, and this could set a dangerous precedent. Also, I generally recommend that any claims filed against the city be denied by the council so they can be submitted to insurance. And then that, if you understand, again, Wisconsin statutes, is the reason you deny the council is that gives the person the right then to make a claim in court. If you don't take an action, it's automatically denied. If you, of course, pay it, then they don't bring a claim. But it is the first step that anyone that wants to make a claim against a municipality must do, is that submitting it to the governing body. And generally the governing body then would submit it to insurance, which means you have to deny it in order to do that.
Mr. Barnett?
Can Steve clarify exactly what this claim is for? I read it, but I'm still not sure why he thinks the city owes him.
So,
well, go ahead, Chris.
So when we did a hydrant flushing, his water became a little dark for several days. And because of that, he purchased a water filter for his property to clear it up.
Yeah, but water goes dark like that anytime you flush. That's why you're flushing it.
Correct.
So, all right, well, Barnett, I make the motion to deny the claim.
Holt second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those abstain? Motion passes to deny the claim. Moving on to 10D, discuss and/or actions to pay the bills and claims of $4,260,849.47.
Holt, I'll make a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $4,260,849.47.
Daniel second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Tom Kelly,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Kieran Mikulowski,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Motion to pay the bills is approved. Moving on to 10E. So this would be page 29, 30, and 31 in your packet. To my understanding, the contract is the same as last year, minus the dates have changed because it's a new year. Looking for advice of how to move forward. Mr. Holt?
All right, I will make a motion to approve the contract and waiving of fees for the 2023 Oneida County Fair.
Mikulowski second.
Any discussion? Mr. Anderson?
Well, I'm all in favor of approving the contract. I'm just wondering what kind of precedent we are setting, not just in this case. Almost every meeting, somebody comes in asking for a waiver of fees for this or for that. If we're going to have fees, and we have a good reason for them, I don't think we should waive them quite so easily. Also, in this particular case, we were asked to waive the fees last year because they were starting out with new management and we wanted to be particularly encouraging. And I kind of buy that argument for some other organizations or situations also, that to encourage them or help get them started, maybe we should waive something, but I just don't think we should get in the habit of doing it every year, or people expecting us to do it every time. I'm sure that the fee exists. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the number I'm seeing that's crossed out is $4,315. And maybe we should use some explanation of how that is arrived at. But it just seems like they've had a year now to build that into their financial plan. We gave them a break last year. Are we promising to do that every year?
So to answer your question of how we came up with the 4,315, it's based on usage of the entire Pioneer Park, as well as barricades, and then I believe there's some staff time for moving bleachers and stuff like that. So that's how that number came to be.
So why shouldn't we be compensated for staff time that's used? I mean, I've been assuming the fee is not just an arbitrary number, but it's based in some way on the city's expense.
I do not make policy. That's up to you 8 folks. Mr. Jopek.
I tend to agree with Mr. Anderson. I remember the conversation pretty clearly from last year is that we kind of gave it the year to allow them to figure out and waive those fees. I do have concerns about setting precedents for waiving fees. I mean, I do also understand that the fair brings in a lot of people. Last year, I guess one thing I wanted to clarify or get clarification from is, like, prior to this, didn't like Oneida County cover costs and the fees that were associated with this, and that was why we never had to deal with it prior to this. And so then how do we rectify that situation? Because this is called the Oneida County Fair.
So last year was the first year of them being a nonprofit versus a county entity. So I don't know if the county kicked in or because there was another government agency, maybe it got waived for that reason. That I'm not completely clear of, but last year was their first year as a nonprofit. Mr. Barnett?
I can clarify that very clearly. The Oneida County, the county itself, didn't do anything for the Oneida County Fair except give it barely enough money to pay for one band. They didn't pay for the fees. It was a quid pro quo from one government entity to another government entity. The reason that we have a 4,000 fee, you're right, it's not arbitrary, but it was nickeled and dimed into the fee schedule by Zach Gruwink. And this is something that I brought to council to have it waived, to get it back to where it was historically, the way it should be. And we had all but one, which was Mr. Anderson, vote yes to do that. The mayor vetoed it, and all of a sudden now we're back to where we are now. So you want to talk about precedent, that's precedent. Having a veto on a 7-to-1 vote, that's precedent.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah. To quote a fellow council member of mine, this $4,000 buys a lot of goodwill. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Jopek?
I agree that the $4,000 does, but again, it comes back to we have a government to run. And so the $4,000, if that's more than what it used to be, then we clearly need to rectify that situation and see what happened to the billing process. But again, at the same time, we have to pay the bills. And so if we're dedicating staff, if we're dedicating equipment, if we're dedicating these things, we can't just brush this off. We can't just sweep it under, because if we do that with everything, that's how you end up in deficit spending. And I'm not a Keynesian theorist or anything, but I'd rather not. I'd rather avoid it. So I guess I'm not against it. I have concerns about the precedent. And again, as Mr. Barnett spoke and mentioned that the rate has gone up, and so we need to revisit that before. I'm not willing to vote against it or for it until I know what were they previously charged.
So I don't think we can with this body until there's another election, because it was brought up during this election cycle, and this body voted on the fee and ordinance. Steve might know more, but I don't think we could revisit an ordinance twice with one body. If that's correct.
That's correct.
So this is under, so the new $4,000 is under the new fee schedule
Correct.
that
which
we
is-
all voted for.
Correct. So until the next election cycle and the new body takes place, I do not believe we could adjust it.
So this is not
Excuse
just Zach Gruink.
Excuse me, it is. It is.
Mr.
Zach
Barnett,
Gruink.
Mr. Barnett, you were not acknowledged first. Second off, this motion was brought to the body and the body voted on it and it passed. So this was an outcome of the
Sure,
body.
you got it, Chris. Sure.
Mr. Anderson.
I move to amend the motion to approve the contract, to delete the wording, let's just say, to add the charges per fee schedule.
Would there be a second to that?
Can you restate that? I didn't catch the end of it.
I believe we have a motion to approve the contract.
Turn your mic on.
Correct.
Sorry. I believe we have a motion to approve the contract with a waiver of fees.
Correct. That's what's
And
on the
my
table
motion
with a
is
second.
to delete the part about waiving fees.
So that's a motion to amend, to approve contract with the fees of $4,315. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Kelly. So now on the amendment of approving the contract with the fees, is there any discussion? Mr. Barnett?
I think that there needs to be a lot more clarification about how this came about. Like I said, having a 7-to-1 vote vetoed by the mayor because he doesn't agree with it is you want to talk about setting precedent. That's precedent. That's setting a really bad precedent, actually. $4,000 to charge the fair to bring all these people into the community to spend money in downtown businesses. That is going to take a huge chunk out of the fair's ability to put on a good fair. If you want to do that, that's up to council. I'm not going to vote on this, but I think it's a shame that historically the city has not gone broke supporting local nonprofit entities to put on great shows and bring in tourism and all sorts of things into this community. Historically, the city has not gone into deficit, has not done deficit spending because of this. So to use that as an excuse is just a bunch of bunk. So if you guys want to vote that way, that's fine. I don't know how long the fair can go on with that, and that's not on me.
Thank you. Mr. Holt?
Yeah, obviously I made the original motion, and I am in favor of waiving the fees for the Rhinelander County Fair. And to speak to the idea of precedent, I don't think this sets precedent because with regard to that particular language, your statement as mayor when we discussed it was, well, why don't we leave it open so that anybody can come to ask for fees to be waived because they might have a compelling reason to ask, and therefore we shouldn't specify nonprofits. That was your comment on that, and that's the way the council ultimately went to not include that language highlighting or welcoming nonprofits. Yes, any organization that is running an event in the city limits can ask to have fees waived, and that is a case-by-case basis. So we're not setting any kind of precedent because we reserve the right to say no. So an argument that this is somehow tying our hands in the future is not accurate. And As far as the goodwill with regard to it, yes, I understand it's called the Oneida County Fair. Yes, I understand that there's a very rich, shall we say, history of Oneida County and its relationship to its fair and the reason why it's in the city limits. However, it is still the county fair. And I don't think that waiving the fees in this case actually breaks the bank. And I understand that is a cost to the city and cost to city taxpayers in the same way that many other decisions that we make or don't make in some way increase cost. That's my position. I'm going to vote against the amendment and for my original motion.
Mr. Anderson?
I'd like to ask the attorney a question, and then I have a further comment. The question is, if we don't have the right to amend the fee schedule as such, do we have the right to partially waive a fee, or make some judgment about how much of it we want to waive, if we want to waive it, or is it all or nothing? Waive it or don't waive it?
Okay, I think the question that's being posed is whether or not, based on the previous ordinance that was vetoed, and not, the veto not overridden, that when it was voted on to whether or not you would have a overall rule suggesting that nonprofits are exempt from fees. I mean, that was my understanding of what had been supported, that nonprofits would be exempt from fees. And my understanding is that was what was vetoed. And so what the veto says, we leave the law the way it is, which means that there is no automatic exemption for nonprofits. And I think what you're asking me, does that mean that you automatically have to charge a fee for nonprofits? And I don't think that that's a corollary. I think that you can't, you voted down an automatic across the board decision to not charge fees for nonprofits. But I don't believe that that prevents you from voting on lesser fees, more fees, different fees. You voted on a fee structure, and that's the fee structure that's in place. But you can have circumstances that would allow you, not as a generality, because that was already voted on. So you have to charge the fees, but you could waive the fees. You could do other things if you had standards that would do that. That would be my interpretation of what action has occurred and where we sit right now. Is that answering your question?
So we could do a partial waiver.
Well, you're not waiving, you're setting, if you read this contract, it says that we're going to set this at a fee of, a flat fee of, as I read it.
Yeah.
And you could put any number you want in there. You could put $100,000 in there. I mean, there's nothing in this contract that says this is predicated on how long it took us to pick up the trash or how long it, I mean, as I understand where the fee came from, someone sat down and mathematically figured out what the cost should be. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that specific of a number. But the reality is you're voting on a contract that's before you right now, and you can insert another number in that contract. That isn't waiving the fees or not waiving the fees. That's saying I have a contract in front of me, and the contract says we're going to pay a flat fee of something after the fair is over. That's what the contract says.
And just to clarify, I believe you're mistaken, Steve. There was two actions for the body. One was the fee schedule, which was approved, and then there was an issue with an ordinance where carnivals would have special treatment. That is what got vetoed.
Yeah,
So
okay.
they're two different actions.
Yeah, okay. So, but again, I'm only talking about what's here tonight. And what's here tonight, and you can forget all the rest of that stuff, because I think it's all, to use David's words before, it's kind of just fluff. It doesn't really mean anything. But what you have in front of you right now is you have a contract that you're being asked to vote on. And that contract has a provision that has a fee in it that was crossed out, and that met the definition of what the first motion was at a flat fee of 0 is what I interpreted the first motion to be, and you amended that motion, and that's the amendment we're voting on, or you're going to be voting on, and you amended it to put a number in there, and that number you put in there was 4,103. I don't have it right in front of me right now.
15, I guess.
Yeah.
13.
So following parliamentary procedure, you're voting on a contract. You're not voting on a fee structure. You're voting on a contract, whether you're going to support this contract as it was presented to you. I hope you also amend the contract to say today rather than March 13th, but that's up to you too.
Mr. Joe Peck?
Is this something that we can approach, just something to kick down, not kick down the road, I don't want to say that, but something that we can review as far as establishing something that's multi-year in nature? Like, I understand that that's all up in the air, whatever, but add some kind of, because like, we're doing this again this year. Are we going to do this every year?
It's up to the body.
Right, and so like my question becomes, and we can say whatever we want. I'm not trying to use deficit spending as an excuse. I'm pro community. I get that, but at the same time, what we're being asked to do is eat $4,000, and I understand $4,000 is not a lot. I get it in the small scale. I understand, but every year from here on out, we're being asked to eat $4,000. So I understand that, like, it's not deficit spending, whatever, but what I just want to raise the concern that this is something we're going to approach every year. And in that regard, it kind of does set precedent, because we've already asked ourselves, what did we do last year? And what did we refer to last year? And so again, I'm not necessarily against it. I want to explore the overall ramifications of the decision. And explore, is there a better way to do this than every year we're going to come back to this point and say, are we going to waive the $4,000 or the $5,000 or the $2,000, whatever, for the Oneida County Fair?
Mr. Anderson?
When we use, okay, I don't think that veto resolution has anything precedential regarding this, but when we talk about precedent, I don't think anybody's claiming there's some kind of binding legal precedent, but it's about expectations. And obviously, based on granting an exemption last year, the fair has gone ahead and felt they had no reason to budget for this year. They treated it as a precedent. And, I'd be fine, with saying, well, we'll only charge half this year and then we'll go to the full amount next year and give them time to adjust. But the term precedent seems to fit, that we don't want, I don't think we want to get them in the mood where they think they can do this every year.
Mr. Barnett?
Well, Gerald, I find that incredibly insulting. We work extremely hard in making sure that we budget for every possible scenario. What the fair is doing is they're coming to the body and asking for the fees to be waived so we don't have to cut into our regular budget. To say that we don't budget right or do any of that, try coming to a county board meeting or a fair meeting. Maybe you'll see exactly how things work then, because you're having a very hard time understanding. As far as precedent goes, it is precedent because there were no fees on any non-for-profits until Zach Fruin got in there and made up that fee schedule. That's precedent. It was always waived. It was under a quid pro quo that the fair brings in a whole bunch of stuff for the community. It helps small businesses with all the revenue coming in. It helps bring something really fun to Rhinelander and the county alone. If this is what we're going to do, that's fine. You know, I'm just saying, maybe Rhinelander doesn't want a county fair then. That's up to you guys. I'm really frustrated right now because you're making a lot of accusations and assumptions that you know nothing about. Do what you guys got to do.
Mr. Chairman, should he be instructed not to speak directly to other people on the board, on the council?
Yeah, Mr. Anderson, I think we're getting way off what the motion is
Well,
on
yes,
the floor.
we
And we can debate the quality of the fair, but that's not the agenda item. The agenda item is a contract, and there's a motion on the floor to reinsert the number, and that's what's before you right now, whether there should be 0 or the $4,132, whatever it is. And I think that's what you have to vote on. And that's what you should be discussing too.
So at this point, I'm going to call the vote on the amendment, which would be to approve the contract with the fee of $4,315.
No, it's to approve the amendment
Oh,
to
yes,
the
approve the
motion.
amendment, sorry. Which would be to approve the contract and the $4,315. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Eileen Daniel,
Nay.
David Holt,
Nay.
Tom Kelly, Stephen Jopek,
Nay.
Thomas Barnett,
Abstain.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski.
Nay.
I'm going to point something out, Tom. When you participate under Robert's Rules
I
of
know.
Order, when you participate in a discussion, you cannot vote, absent or abstain. You must vote.
All right, nay.
Okay.
Okay, so amendment does not pass, it dies. So at this point, we're back to the original motion, unless someone makes an amendment to approve the contract with no fee for 2023.
Well, can I just have the clarification that we can change the date till today, and we can take the words flat fee out, or unless you want a flat fee of 0? You don't have to vote on it, just say that you're okay with that.
Yes, I'm okay with that change to my.
Yep. Mr. Anderson?
Well, I'd like to move that we insert $2,000 in that blank for the fee.
Is there a second? No. Okay, I do not hear a second, thus the amendment dies. Going back to the original motion, is there any other discussion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
You cannot, yeah.
Tom Kelly, Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Motion passes. Oneida County Fair 2023 contract is approved. Moving on to F, discuss action or action, request the council forgiveness of penalties levied by the city building inspector against Maple Creek Construction for failure to procure required building permits. I don't know if we should refer to Mr. Tom Wadick to start, who is our inspector.
So this is in regards to the Holiday Inn Express. They did have early start permits. They wanted to get started on the project. The owners group pulled that permit. So when the state approvals came in, Maple Creek provided us with a set of plans and a conditional approval letter, but no permits were pulled to proceed with the project. They were under the assumption that the owners group had provided the permits or pulled the permits. Preparing to do an inspection on site, I was looking for the permits, looking for the plans to review them before showing up on site. Noticed they weren't there. I contacted Tim, and I did ask him about the permit. For a permit number, he tried to get that from the owners. Once it was brought to their attention they did not have permits, they did work to secure the permits. However, our policy is, the city's policy, the fee schedule that was adopted within the last 2 years requires a double fee anytime work is done without a permit. It used to be a triple fee. It was changed to a double fee. The triple fee was imposed kind of at the discretion of the inspection department based on the circumstances. When it was changed to a double fee, we were told that we were to assess it every time to be consistent. So we were consistent across the board. If somebody did work, proceeded with work, we were to do the double fee. Therefore, the double fee was assessed, and they are here asking for some type of forgiveness for that fee.
What would be that fee amount? Is it the $27,716.90?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah, I have a question with regard to this. Is the fee, the doubling of the fee, sort of in line with a penalty or fine for not following a regulation, or does it cost the city additional? Was there an additional cost incurred to taxpayers that this procedure was not followed, or is this a penalty to make sure that work is not done?
It's a deterrent.
It's a deterrent.
Because we have a lot of projects in town right now. They are not intentionally trying to avoid the permits, so, but we do have a lot of projects we're catching in town where they are. And so that's why we have to be consistent with how we administer this fee.
Thank you.
And then it has to come to you for forgiveness.
Mr. Jopek?
I'm very not up to speed on this, so I'm going to ask you maybe what seem like simple questions. What's to stop this miscommunication from happening again? Not with these particular ones, this particular builder, but just in general, how long were they building until we realized that there was a missing permit? Because it's my understanding that they were pretty far into the process before we realized that the permit was missing. And so my question becomes, how I understand that they did it right away, and I appreciate that, but also how long was this going on before?
It was when they called for the first floor inspection is when we realized they did not have a permit.
Okay. About, do you know how roughly, like a month of work or?
Maybe a month of work, yep.
Okay.
I will also state any contractor knows you're the one liable for pulling permits. It's not on the municipality to, follow that. It's more on the builder, the contractor, who's ever liable in that contract to make sure all permits are pulled too. Ms. Michalowski, I think, was first.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the request to council to forgive penalties levied by city building inspector against Maple Creek Construction for failure to procure required building permits.
Anderson, second.
Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Jopek?
Just discussing that we just had this long discussion about precedent. I'm going to be in favor of Ms. Michalowski's motion because if we were to use this timeline for any other builder in the city, that's going to come back with, oh, we didn't know, we'll apply for it. They apply for it right away, and then we look back at this time and say, well, what do we do this time? And so I tend to be one of those that's going to look at it historically, and I'm going to be in favor of that.
Mr. Holt?
I agree with Carrie and Stephen. That having gone through the stress of making sure that all of my ducks were in a row, and the fact that we've got a lot of projects in town, it seems like we cannot deviate from that.
Okay, not seeing any other discussions. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Karen Michalowski.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Okay, motion to denied, approved. Moving on to 10G, discuss action resolution 2023-5, approving the adoption of the Oneida County All Hazardous Mitigation Plan update. Refer to Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor Hannes. Excuse me. This was a all-hazard mitigation plan update that was done by Oneida County. I believe our fire chief was involved in this, so brought to you for your consideration.
Ms. Michalowski?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2023-5, approving the adoption of the Oneida County All Hazards Mitigation Plan update.
Jopek second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Karen Michalowski.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson. Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
3-6, supporting the allowance of all-terrain utility vehicles on the Kemp Street Bridge. So to go into more detail, from Kemp Street Bridge out to the roundabout is actually maintained by the county, so it is not our road. There is a UTV group that is requesting the county to allow them to use ATVs on that part of the road. That way they have access to Culver's, to the hotels, to the restaurant. They are asking for our support, saying that we think that would be a good positive for the community. I did speak with a police chief who seemed to have no concerns. I don't know if anything you'd want to add to that. So at this point, administration's recommending that we approve this.
Chopek move to approve resolution number 2023-6, resolution in support of allowing all-terrain UTV vehicles to actively utilize the Kemp Street Bridge.
Holt second.
Any discussion? Not seeing. Clerk, please take the roll call. Mr. Barnett, did you?
I did. Do our street department guys have any concern about that traffic on the bridge as far as road conditions?
I would refer to Randy, who's in the room.
No immediate concerns. We're content to defer to the police chief on this matter.
All right, thank you, Randy.
Okay. Tom, your DoorDash in the background is on by chance. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett. David Holt.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 10I, Resolution 2023-7, participating in the 2023 Operational Beaver Damage Management Program. I will refer to Patrick on this one.
Thank you, Mayor Hannes. Yeah, apparently the city since 2017 has been taking part in this. The USDA helps to control the beaver population. Basically, when they build their dams and their habitats, flooding can occur, which will negatively impact roads, bridges, culverts, etc., by the ponding that occurs behind it. So, like I said, you've been taking part in it since 2017, and it's at the same cost, which is a maximum of $1,500.
Daniel, make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-7, approving, authorizing, and directing the city administrator to sign a cooperative services agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture for participation in the 2023 Operational Beaver Damage Management Program.
Holt second.
Mr. Anderson?
I noticed the second item under resolve says all resolutions that conflict with this resolution are rescinded. Are there any resolutions we should be aware of that we're rescinding here?
None that I know of. It's usually just standard resolution language.
Mr. Jopek?
This is probably research I can do on my own, but I'm just curious what the beaver dam prevention, what part we play in it. I'm just curious, like, genuinely. So if you could get with me offline and show me that, that'd be sweet.
I can tell you right now if you'd like.
Okay.
We pay for the privilege.
Oh.
That's basically it.
And we just break apart beaver dams?
Yeah, they bring in and they help control it. That's my understanding.
All right. Easy enough.
Mr. Anderson?
Just a question, should the dollar amount be included in the resolved clause as well as in the whereas?
I would turn to the city attorney.
It's a resolution, so it really doesn't matter, Gerald. It's if you feel comfortable, if you don't feel comfortable with it, but it's a resolution that will cooperate. That's really all it is. You understand what I'm saying? Am I making us?
It's not a contract, it's an agreement.
Yeah, but it's your resolution to allow the city to enter into the agreement.
Okay, with that, clerk, please take the roll call.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Kerry Mikulowski.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to 10J, discuss and/or action of resolution 2023-8, approving firework display agreement with J&M Display for 4th of July. This would be the same company we used last year. The price is higher from last year based on inflation costs and just to have a similar product go boom. Mr. Kelly?
Do we get any help from Pine Lake and Crescent? Any of the townships contribute towards the fireworks that we provide?
In the past, they were not giving in that category.
Pine Lake used to. All right.
So, and this does come out of the room tax fund.
Mhm.
So I believe we did budget 28 to 30,000 for this category, so we're still under budget from what we planned on.
Holt, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-8, approving a fireworks display agreement with J&M Displays for 4th of July fireworks.
I'll second.
Second by Kelly. Any discussion? Mr. Jopek?
Again, this might just me being a layman at this whole thing. In the budget, did it specifically mention fireworks?
I believe so, but I would have to refer to probably Wendy, but I believe we do have a category in room tax for 4th of July festivities, technically, I believe.
If you go to the budget page of the Fund 207, there is a line, and in the notes, it does say it's for fireworks and streetscapes and 4th of July celebration. But I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
One concern I had coming into this was that the budget increased $10,000. Like the last year for J&M, we had agreed as a council to $15,000 and not going higher despite inflationary costs. And now we're up to $25,000. And so that was just why but if I voted to approve the budget, then I'm as equally responsible as everybody else.
Part of it, just as a word of caution, this did take us about a month and a half to procure from them. So if this was not approved and you want us to seek other bids, we might be in jeopardy of not having a show based on timeline. Mr. Jopek?
So you mentioned earlier that it was the same, like about the same amount of boom.
That is the words they used for me, yes.
And so the value of the boom went up $10,000.
Correct. So I don't know if that's a labor cost, I don't know if that's product cost, shipping cost, their choice, so. The perk of firework explosion companies is not a lot to pick from, so they kind of dictate what they want to charge. Okay, not seeing any other discussion. Since it's a dollar amount, clerk, please take the roll call.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye, sorry.
Gerald Anderson. Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Kerry Mikulowski.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Moving on to 10K, discuss council committees. There's been brought to my attention by multiple alderpersons if should we go back to a council committee structure of some kind. So this is just starting the conversation if we would like to, and then what's the structure for said committees. Mr. Kelly?
A little history on this. Years ago, well, not years ago, a few years back, we would, for example, if Lloyd needed a new squad car, he would come to the Public Safety Committee, discuss it, we would approve it, find out where the money is going and or going to come from, and then we would advance that proposal to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee would yay or nay, and eventually it would end up in front of the council. The point is, you'd have 5 members on each committee, and they'd be, I shouldn't say interchangeable, but they would be interchangeable. So you would have two people from public safety probably on the Finance Committee, and or I've got a couple here that I think would be interesting. Finance, Parks, Buildings and Grounds, Public Works / Water, and Public Safety. And I think Finance and Public Safety are probably the 2 most important ones to run our police and fire departments and to pay the bills. So that's the way historically it works. Now, the county, state, and federal governments all have committees. We don't. And I think it's time we looked at this again. This was committee of the whole was an idea of Steve Sauer and Mayor Frederickson. And that's where we were.
Mr. Jopek?
So the benefit of the committee would be to add further vetting of potential resolutions, whatever amendments, the whole 9 yards, whatever, before it got to city council. That's the benefit of it, correct? To have more eyes on it
And
before it gets here.
Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, with that structure, we had one council meeting a month
Yeah.
and then committee meetings. So pretty much this body as a whole would meet once a month to vote on all the matters before us, but the committees would more dig into the details and recommend to common council, similar to what our planning commission does now when it comes to annexations and stuff like that.
What do surrounding areas and towns and cities of our size, how do they operate?
Committees.
The historical methodology was the committee structure, but the vast majority of municipalities, especially municipalities of this size, where you don't have full-time representatives, have gone away from the committee structure. There's several reasons for that, but just to answer your question, the vast majority of municipalities of this size would operate with the committee of the whole council type format, or the format that Rhinelander has adopted, which is 2 council meetings a month. The reasoning is generally related to the fact that if you get 2 or if you get 3 council members at a meeting, that is a meeting of the council, because that's a negative quorum. And when you have a negative quorum, you still have to notice it as a council meeting, and then other council members can come. And then the concept is, if decisions are made at that, are those decisions binding upon the council as a whole? And so to prevent that, that's why a lot of communities have gone to the committee of the whole, where everybody can participate at every issue. But that's up to you. I'm just giving you the background.
Ms. Daniel? Mr. Holt?
Thank you. So there are only 2 council members on the council right now that were on council when we had committees. That's Tom Kelly and myself. And so I would like to go through, first of all, I will state, spoiler alert, I am very much not in favor of reinstating standing committees. This does not prevent us from having ad hoc committees. I'm very against that, and I can go through, I have a page of notes here. But one thing is that this question has been asked multiple times of our city attorney, and he has explained multiple times, thoroughly, I believe, why it is an anachronistic structure, given that it is 2023. And cars exist and such. And so one thing that I find important here is about efficiency and transparency. I have listened for a few years now since we made this decision, which, by the way, that council was a unanimous decision to go away from the committees, about this idea that they're more transparent. And I can say from experiencing both having committees and not having committees, that is absolutely not the case. This is extremely transparent. Everybody knows that we have 2 council meetings at 6 p.m. on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month, with the exception of national state holidays. And that is transparent. Another problem that I had with the committees is that they divided the council. Individuals, not all council members are hearing the same information. My experience was that people who chaired those committees often, they had different styles, and they often went what I would consider quite outside the lane of council member in terms of how they interacted with city staff, asserting powers that are presumed or assumed, and presumed power that is not checked becomes actualized power. And that was a pretty substantial problem and a pretty substantial reason for going away from them. Another aspect of this is how often those committees met. The first year that I was on council, I was late to a lot of 4:30 p.m. meetings of either public safety or public works because my job prevented me from getting here on time, right? So those meetings were prior to when a lot of people get off of work. That prevents them from going to them. Another comment about the idea that Lloyd would have to go to one committee and then to another committee and then to another committee and then to the council for final approval. This is city staff. Department heads had to be at these meetings. I think it's important to understand that when we sit in meetings, we're spending taxpayer money, and that abolishing that system saved this city over $10,000 a year. And where is that money coming from? What is the cost? The cost is per diem to council members. The cost is extra time that department heads have to spend in lots of meetings. And so one of the aspects there, and what's the flip side of that in terms of our responsibility as council members, because I hear this as well, in terms of the amount of time, lead time we have to review material. What I hear when I hear that, frankly, quite frankly, is I don't want to read the agenda if I'm not in a meeting where I'm getting per diem. This is not a professional position. We are volunteers. Even though, yes, we have per diem for meetings, we are volunteers, and it is incumbent upon us to volunteer our time to come to meetings prepared. I think that the amount of work product that we get through and the efficiency with which we do it compared to the old system that we had is staggering, actually, in terms of how efficient the city government runs. I think that the culture of City Hall is very much improved for a lot of reasons that had some elements of tied to committees. And then lastly here, anyone who wanted to host an event in town had to go to public safety, had to go to public works, had to go to parks and grounds, had to go to multiple committees of 5 council members when we only have 8 council members. And right now, they come to one meeting, and they have a choice of 2 per month to come to. I have not seen a single issue since I've been on council that would have functioned better had we had committees, standing committees. And that is speaking from the experience of that first year that I was on council and comparing it to all the subsequent years that I've been on council. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on some of this. I'm not really in favor of standing committees in the way it's been described. But it seems like some committee work that needs to get done, and I don't think we do that very efficiently in our meetings. Just one example tonight, if we had a parks committee that thoroughly went over the softball field situation at Pioneer Park and was able to come up with a recommendation with all the reasons behind it the first time around, it would be much easier than having to send it back to get more information It seems like so many of the things we do come before us in somewhat incomplete form that a committee should perhaps formulate better. Given that, there seems to be still opposition to standing committees, then I think the issue is for us to figure out how to do our committee work better. And one of the trade-offs that I've heard in the past was if you don't have to go to all these committee meetings, then you need to be willing to spend the time in the council meetings that it takes to thoroughly discuss things. And when I first started on council, and I assume for some time before that, we had a lot of 2.5 and 3 hour meetings. Now there seems to be a pressure amongst the group to shorten the meetings as much as possible and to, let's say, to be more strict about the rules of order. As it was presented, this quasi-committee of the whole or informal procedure plan involves giving more time for discussion, allowing us to get into all the ins and outs of things, to compare opinions, and to come to an agreement that where we all understand it, and we don't have people coming back later and saying, well, I didn't understand that. I hear over and over the idea that we need to do our due diligence before we come to the meetings. Well, how is it efficient in terms of the government, the city government operations, to have each of us have to go and talk to a staff member about a particular issue so that we can be informed? It seems like that needs to be built into the structure of these meetings if we are going to be taking on the job of committees. As I've thought about this, I've also thought about the fact that each of us has different gifts or attributes in this business. You know, and some people like to gather the information or opinions through talking with people and pretty much stop with that. I like to dig into the wording of things, as you well know, and try to make things come out clearly and understandably. And I think both of those and more are valuable ways in which we input to this committee process. But that involves being willing to listen to each other, to deal with the fact that somebody might not have been listening the first time, and not have too many complaints about going around in circles just because somebody needs to be caught up. And it kind of bothers me when we have meetings in which, and this has nothing to do with the importance of the issues involved, there is more time spent on public comment than on our discussion of the whole agenda. And we've had a few of those this year. I don't know, it doesn't seem like we're doing our committee work. So I guess what I would like to ask for is, if we're doing the function of committees, then we need to be willing to have the discussion that it takes, and not keep bouncing things off and expecting staff to fix it up or that kind of thing, but to be able to work out what we want. I hear the attorney, for instance, continually saying, I can write it however you want it, but you got to tell me what it is you want. Well, how do we do that until we have a thorough discussion? So I'm not pushing for going back to the old system of committees, although I think we should have a few temporary committees or task forces for particular situations to investigate something and report back with ideas and facts and recommendations. But just that we become comfortable with the idea that if we function as a committee here, we got to act like a committee and not be purely a legislative body.
Ms. Daniel?
I think everybody who's been to more than 3 meetings knows that I am also against the whole committee structure as it was prior. And one of the main reasons, and I just want to reiterate a few things here. First, we get our packets, we get our agendas. I'm looking back here, we got our packet on Thursday. All the material was in there. I read through it when I get it, right? If there was anything in there, then I would reach out to Steve or I would reach out to someone and say, hey, why is this like this? Can we change that before the meeting, right? And if it can get changed in the packet prior to us meeting on Monday night, then we don't have to have a big long discussion about it. And so I think it is inherent upon all of us as alder people that we know we have to look at the packet, look at the agenda, understand what's going to be discussed, come with questions, come with our comments. And again, going back to transparency, this is as transparent as you can get. There are no committees meeting at 9:30 on a Tuesday that nobody can get to because they have jobs and lives, except for the 5 people who are on that committee who are retired. And that's the way it was in the past, right? So we had a lot of committees meeting at days and times when the general public, if they even knew about the meeting, could get to it. And yeah, they put the public hearing notices in the newspaper. How many read the newspaper? How many are reading all the public hearing notices? Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't either. I don't get the paper, right? So even though they're noticed, nobody knows when they were. We had golf meetings. They had a golf committee. It met on average, and I don't know why I did this a couple years ago before I ran for this office. On average, they met for 17 minutes. 17 minutes out at the golf course. That's how long the committee met. That's your tax dollars at work. I just don't want us to go back to that. I don't want it to go back to the people who are on the committees are the ones who have, they're retired, right? They don't have a day job, right? So we're get back to the same people doing the same things over and over, and we end up back where we were 4 years ago, which if any of you, and some of you guys remember, it wasn't great. It really wasn't great. So that's just my 2 cents, and I just encourage everybody to read their packets ahead of time, reach out ahead of time so that we don't have to have these changes made during the meeting.
Mr. Holt?
Thank you. Yeah, one thing I want to specify, because just as a terminology issue, the structure we have now is not a committee of the whole. That was discussed as an option, but a committee of the whole operates on different rules. This is 2 council meetings, period. And the next thing I want to point out, that the idea of the length of meetings and the time taken, it is also my observation, having been in both systems, that our meetings with committees, with standing committees, they were longer and had far less work product done. And part of that was because of the number of meetings that, by definition, 3 members of the council had to be brought up to speed with every council meeting. So I don't think that we've had very many 3-hour meetings since then. We've had a few that have gone long, and we've had some that had 70 agenda items on them. And that's it's important, though. I do respect what Gerald said about time. It is important to go ahead. We owe it to the process to take the time necessary to thoroughly discuss things that need to be thoroughly discussed. But we also need to balance that with the fact that that the length of a meeting, we've got department heads here that that have to be here for the meeting, that is taxpayer money as well. So we should be prudent as council members to pay attention to using time as efficiently as possible. The next comment I would like to make about those committees, and in particular the chairs of those committees, was the level of micromanagement of city staff by the council. We are a legislative body. We have an administrative branch, we have a legislative branch, we have a city attorney, and then we have staff. And my approach with regard to management is that you give your staff what they need to do their jobs, and you trust them to do their jobs, and you let them do their jobs, and you don't get in their way. And so I think that things are most efficient in that regard. When we had standing committees, in some cases there were committee chairs that essentially acted like the personal city administrator for their department head, that specifically directed actions, and that is inappropriate. At no time should an individual council member be calling upon a department head or city staff member to take a specific action. We act as a body, we act as a council, and outside of that called meeting and those directives that we vote on, we're citizens, right? I think that my recollection really is that the meetings were longer and got less done, and we only had one of them, and now we do so much more. And everybody is on the same page because the information is presented all together here. So that's all I have to say.
Mr. Kelly?
I just wanted to set the record straight. I was chairman of the Gulf Commission. Bill Freudenberg was chairman of the Gulf Commission, and I don't remember any 17-minute meetings. One out at the golf course. Or here. Because we used to have golf course meetings 2 or 3, and then most of our meetings were here. But I don't remember ever 17.
Cool. Mr. Anderson, what would be your comments?
I appreciate the amount of discussion we've had here this evening, and I think that's part of how we should be operating. As far as to make the process more efficient, maybe we should, in line with Mr. Holt's comment, maybe we should look at organizing the meeting according to which staff members have to be here at certain times, or for a certain length of time, and take care of their stuff first and then go on to other things. That might help somewhat. The other thing that I think would help is, I really appreciated it when Austin was trying to get the packets out like Wednesday morning or sometime Wednesday. And I wish we could sort of move back in that direction at least. I know it's not possible every time, but late Friday afternoon, which has happened sometimes lately, does not give enough time to try to talk with the staff or get answers, or the answers come at 5:45 before the meeting, which that's not so helpful either. So getting the packets out earlier would help some, I'm sure.
Mr. Jopek?
The only thing I want to add is this conversation has been extremely enlightening. As far as things I've been thinking about while listening to these things is that I think not standing committees, but committees, something I'm going to consider in the future is for guidance for the mayor and for the city administrators when I feel that a committee might be handy. Like in the sense of us trying to solve the Olson Lane issue, I think it would be handy to have a few of us sit down and like work through all the special assessment stuff so that then we can sit down here and, you know, one or two of us can say, this is what we learned, this is what we walked through, these are the conversations we had, blah, 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 to that then we can have those much more thorough conversations. That being said, I don't think a standing committee is necessary for that. I think that's a here and there when something comes up that we need to resolve. So I do appreciate the enlightening conversation because in my head I've just always seen it as I need to advise or vote to advise, and it's never crossed my mind that potential for a committee or something for a short-term issue could be brought up. So otherwise, I think this is solved.
Mr. Barnett?
Mr. Sorensen, isn't that what an ad hoc committee is? I'm legit asking. I'm not. Ad hoc committees are committees that are made up for a very limited, specific reason. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that I would mention. Yes, you can obviously, that's an ad hoc committee. The other thing that I think Mr. Jopek is talking about, and we should probably do more of, is training. And we can certainly, as an administration, do that. And I would also strongly suggest that if given the opportunity, use the League of Municipalities and the programs they put on, because those training things can help. One of the mistakes that at least the two of us might make is we've been doing this so long, or words and ideas are so normal to us that we don't realize sometimes that that's not your everyday life. And I apologize for that at times. But yes, to answer your question, Tom, an ad hoc committee can certainly look at all kinds of issues.
So if like the Olson Lane thing, we could have made an ad hoc committee to get the answers about Olson Lane, and then once that was all answered and brought to council, that committee would just go away. So maybe that's another option to the committees then, actually assigning ad hoc committees. Is that a power to the city council or to form an ad hoc committee?
The council can, or the mayor can. Those would be the only two people. Generally, it would be the president of the council or the mayor.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah, to add to that, yes, ad hoc committees can be very useful in trying to fix specific problems. Another very useful thing is workshops, which we have had. We've had work sessions. We show up on our own time. It is not a meeting where decisions are going to be made or votes are going to be tallied. It is a discussion session of the entire council.
To comment on Mr. Holt's statement, with that too, then every council member has a say and a voice, where if you have a committee, it would only be a handful. So I think that also makes it more transparent and more open for everyone to speak and talk about issues in a work session versus an ad hoc committee. Okay, is there any motions or actions regarding this topic? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on to number 11, monthly reports from departments.
I will make a motion to accept the monthly reports from departments as presented.
Any discussion? Not seeing. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Moving on to number 12, someone like to take us into closed session?
Joe Peck moved to go to closed session, convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute section 19.85 in order to deliberate on the negotiation on the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically discussing a potential development opportunity which will require negotiations on the investing of public funds or public properties.
Hold second.
Okay, clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett. Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Motion passes 7:54, and we're going into closed session. It is 8:13, and we are back from closed session with nothing to report. Any future agenda item requests? Mr. Jopek?
I'd like to just visit the, some kind of conversation about the Oneida County Fair and like long-term resolving that, if that makes sense. Like, to where we're not coming back to this every year and determining like what can we do with Oneida County Fair to make sure that this doesn't happen every year.
Just a caution, the other question, in case anybody's watching us or going to go back to the fair people, we really got to get a commitment from them, because there's been lots of talk about moving the fair to different locations, so that would really change.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't real pushy on making a longer-term contract, Steve. Otherwise, I think a longer-term contract would really be in order.
Yeah, and even with verbiage that's just like for the time being, or as long as it's intended to be, I don't know, just something where we're not doing this every year.
Okay. With that, it is 8:14, meeting adjourned.